Hi, guys, welcome. This reading will be about why you cannot let go of a specific person. This is not going to be the nice version, this will be the real version, as honest as possible. And I'm going to be looking at the part that keeps you going in circles in your head, even when you want to move on. And I have two groups here, group one and group two. So don't overthink it, just pick the one that you feel pulled to. So take a moment, and then when you're ready, go to your group, and I'm going to start the reading with group number one. Hello, group number one. So this is for all of you that picked group number one, and it's about why you cannot let go of this person. Not the story you tell yourself, but the real reason they still take space in your head. So we'll start with the question, what is really keeping you emotionally tied to this person? So let's see. What is really keeping group number one emotionally tied to this person? We have Five of Swords. Let's see what else. And we have the Three of Wands. So group number one, what I see here, especially with the Five of Swords, is that what's keeping you tied to this person is actually unfinished business. Not in a romantic way, but in a very mental way. The Five of Swords is showing there was conflict and confusion or some sort of emotional mess here. Something didn't end clean. Someone felt misunderstood here, or unheard, or wronged. And I feel like you still have that energy with you. It's not because you want to fight, but because you never got closure. So I feel like you keep replaying things in your head. Maybe you're thinking about what you should have said or what that person should have understood. So with the Three of Wands is showing the other part of this. Like you're still looking forward, you're still wondering, you're still imagining different outcomes here. So you're not holding on to the past, you're holding on to what could have been. So you're not attached to them as they are. You're attached to the future that you pictured. So that's what's keeping you tied. It's not love, it's expectation. Now, let's see, what are you afraid will happen if you fully let them go? What are you afraid it will happen, group number one, if you fully let this person go? And we have Queen of Cups, and we have Seven of Swords. So here you're afraid if you let them go, that you will have to face how much you actually cared. And the Queen of Cups is showing that you are very emotionally deep. Like you feel things fully, you get attached, you don't just like people, like you bond with them. And that's not something that you do lightly. So letting go would mean admitting that this mattered, that you were vulnerable, and that you gave more than you wanted to. And I feel like that can be very uncomfortable. And then with the Seven of Swords, and I feel like this is the real fear. Like you're afraid that you were fooled. Not stupid, just hopeful. You trusted, you believed, you expected honesty from this person. And part of you is scared that if you let go, you will have to admit that you didn't get the full truth or that you ignored the red flags. So holding on feels safer for you than admitting that you were emotionally exposed here. Because once you admit that, you also have to forgive yourself, and that's hard. So you stay tied, not to them, but I feel like you're staying tied to the version of you that was hoping. Now let's see what emotional pattern keeps pulling you back to this person. What emotional pattern keeps pulling group number one back to this person? And we have Two of Swords and we have the Four of Pentacles. So your pattern here is emotional stalling. The Two of Swords is showing that you don't really fully decide, like you stay in limbo. You don't choose forward, but you don't close that door either. You keep things mentally open just in case. And I don't think it's because you're confused, but because deciding feels permanent to you. And then with the Four of Pentacles, this is showing what that turns into. Like it turns into this emotional holding. Like you cling to what's familiar and you cling to what you know and to what you already invested in, even if that doesn't feel good anymore. So I feel like you would rather hold on to something that hurts than face the unknown. So the pattern here is that you don't move on, you kind of pause. You do not let go, you freeze here, and you don't choose, you just hold. And that's why you stay stuck. It's not because you still want this person, but because you're scared of what comes after. So let's see, what is this connection actually teaching you about yourself? What is this connection teaching group number one about themselves? We have the Knight of Swords and we have the Devil. So this connection is actually teaching you how your mind can trap you. Because the Knight of Swords is showing that when something affects you emotionally, you don't just feel it, you kind of think it to death. Like you analyze, you replay, you question, you imagine different outcomes. Like you want answers, you want clarity. You want it to make sense. So instead of letting things end, you keep them alive in your head. And then we have the Devil. And the Devil is showing what that turns into, and it turns into attachment. Not love, but attachment. So you get hooked on the story. You get hooked on the questions, on the what ifs, on this emotional charge. So you're not really stuck on them. You're stuck in this cycle, in this loop. So this connection is teaching you that your biggest struggle is not letting people go. It's letting stories end. So you don't like loose ends. I feel like you don't like not knowing and you don't like unresolved things. So you kind of hold on mentally long after something is over emotionally. And once you see that, something changes. Because it means they don't control you. Your mind controls you. Now, let me take a few oracle cards here and see what does your higher self is trying to tell you about this person right now. What is your higher self trying to tell you about this person right now? We have stress and we have pain. So here I feel like your higher self or your inner self is tired. Like your nervous system is tired. Because this connection does not feel calm at all, or, connection with this person, it feels tense. Like you were always preparing yourself for the next emotional shift or the next misunderstanding or the next weird moment. And even now, when you think about them, your body doesn't relax. It kind of tightens. We have tension. So I feel like your inner self is saying that this wasn't really safe for you emotionally. Not because this person was evil, but because you were always on edge or always careful, always watching what you were saying, how you acted, what it meant. And I feel like that kind of stress leaves a mark on a person. And that's why you are cautious now. That's why you overthink, and that's why you hesitate to let go. Not because you still want this person, but because part of you is still protecting itself. So I feel like your inner self or your higher self is telling you that you're not stuck because you love them, but you're stuck because you don't want to feel that way again. And that's a big difference. So this is really not longing, this is self-protection. So your nervous system learned something here, and now it wants peace. Not answers, not closure, just peace. So group number one, what's keeping you tied to this person is not love. It's actually unfinished business. It's you going over and over in your mind, and it's actually the emotional habit. So you didn't get closure, you didn't get clarity, and your mind keeps trying to fix all of that by replaying the story. But I feel like your inner self or your higher self already knows the truth, that this connection was not calm, that it wasn't safe, that it kept you on edge. So that's why you're so cautious right now. And it's not because you still want this person, but because you don't want to feel like that again. So this is not about going back, it's about protecting yourself. And once you understand that, I feel like letting go stops feeling like a loss and it starts to feel like a relief. So this was your reading, group number one. If this is resonating with you, do leave a comment, subscribe and follow, and I'll see you in the next reading. This reading is for the people that chose group number two. So this is about why you cannot let go of this person. Not the story you tell yourself, but the real reason they still have a hold on you. So let's start with what is really keeping you emotionally tied to this person. Let's see. What is really keeping group number two emotionally tied to this person? Let's see. We have the Four of Swords and we have the Six of Swords in reverse. So group number two, what's keeping you tied to this person is that a part of you is actually mentally very exhausted, but you actually didn't move on. The Four of Swords is showing that you've been trying to rest from this emotionally. Like you've pulled back, you've tried to calm your thoughts, you've told yourself that you're done thinking about this person, but to be honest, you're not really done. I do feel like you want peace and quiet. You want your mind to stop replaying things, but then the Six of Swords in reverse is showing why you're stuck. I feel like you haven't emotionally leave. Like you might not be talking to this person or you might not be seeing them, but I feel mentally you're still there. And you probably already know this. I feel like you're still wondering what they're doing. You still replay conversations in your mind. You still think about what you would say if you ever talked again. So what's keeping you tied is not attachment. It's actually unresolved processing here. You didn't get to fully understand what happened. I feel like you didn't get answers, and I feel like you didn't get the closure. And I feel like your brain hates this unfinished business. So you're not stuck because you still want this person. You're stuck because your mind doesn't like being, like it's like an open tabs on the computer. So you wanna close all of that. You want it to make sense before you let it go. And that's what's keeping you here. So let's see, what are you afraid will happen if you fully let them go? What are you afraid will happen if you fully let them go? We have the High Priestess in reverse, and we have the King of Pentacles also in reverse. So I feel like you are afraid that if you let them go, you will feel kind of ungrounded. Like not emotionally dramatic, but very mentally unsettled. Because the King of Pentacles in reverse is showing fear of instability. Like not knowing what's next, not having something solid to lean on, not having this familiar emotional anchor anymore. So even if this person was not good for you, like they were known to you, So familiar feels safer than uncertain for you and for anybody really. And then we have the High Priestess in reverse. So I feel like you're afraid that if you let this person go, you will have to listen to yourself. And I feel like that could be scaring you. Because deep down, you already know some truths you've been avoiding. You know what didn't feel right. You know what you ignored and what you settled for. So letting go would mean that you cannot pretend that you don't know anymore. And that could be very uncomfortable. So the fear is not loneliness here. I feel like it's clarity. Because clarity forces change. And change means you cannot stay in the same emotional place. So what you're really afraid of is that not missing this person. It's not being alone, but having to rebuild your emotional ground from scratch. And that takes courage. Now let's see what emotional pattern keeps pulling you back to this person. What emotional pattern keeps pulling group number 2 back to this person? We have the Page of Wands and we have the Seven of Swords, but in reverse. So here I feel like you have this pattern of reopening doors emotionally, because the Page of Wands is showing the part of you that it's very curious and hopeful and easily pulled back in by the idea of something new happening. You know, even if nothing actually changes, the possibility of change hooks you back in. You know, maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe this person has grown, or maybe it would be different now. Like maybe this time would be better. And you know what? That's not weakness, it is hope. But the Seven of Swords in reverse is showing like the real shadow side of this. Because deep down you already see the truth. You're not confused, you're not blind. You already know what didn't work. And you probably hate that I'm saying that because it's true. So what keeps pulling you back is not confusion. It's just wanting a different ending. Like you want honesty, you want to repair things, you want it to make sense. You don't want to leave this story unfinished. You're not chasing this person, but you are chasing closure. And you're not attached to who they were, you're attached to the idea that it could have been better. And I feel like that's the emotional pattern for you. So you reopen things not because you are somebody who is naive, but because you don't like unresolved issues or chapters. Now let's see, what is this connection actually teaching you about yourself? What is this connection teaching group number 2 about themselves? We have the Four of Cups and we have the Ten of Pentacles, but in reverse. So this connection was actually teaching you that you've been settling emotionally even when something doesn't really fulfill you. Like the Four of Cups is showing emotional boredom and you not being satisfied. This is not like a dramatic pain, it's just the feeling of something is missing. Like you're there, but you're not really happy. So you go through the motions, but I feel like you're not really in it anymore. So you probably noticed this before things ended, like you just didn't want to deal with it. And then the Ten of Pentacles in reverse is showing a little bit of a deeper lesson. I feel like you've been afraid to let go of something that doesn't actually fit your long-term life. I feel like you've been holding on to what's familiar instead of what's right. So you stayed because it was known, because it could have felt safe, or because starting over felt really scary. So, but you know what? This connection is showing you that comfort is not the same thing as fulfillment. I mean, you can have stability and still feel empty, and you can have history and still feel disconnected from them. You know, you can have something okay, that it's just okay, but you still want more. So you are allowed to want more. Like this connection is teaching you that you don't want to just get by in love. You want to actually feel alive in this. Now, let's take some oracle cards and see What is your inner self or your higher self trying to tell you about this person right now? So, what is group number 2 inner self is trying to tell them about this person right now? We have silence and we have memories. So, your inner self is basically telling you that this connection is emotionally kind of frozen. It just feels stuck. Nothing really is happening anymore. But I feel like nothing is fully over either. I feel like things are quiet. I feel some heavy energy and it feels very unresolved. And I feel like the silence is, silences can be tell you more than any argument ever did. So you're not missing active love, you're missing this shared history here. The memories, the inside jokes. You could be missing the version of you that existed with this person. You know, the moments that felt really nice and warm, even if the ending didn't feel that way. And that's what makes it bittersweet. So you're not craving them as they are now. I feel like you're craving the past version of the connection. And those are two different things. So your inner self is telling you that you're holding on to something that already stopped moving. And this is why it feels frozen. It doesn't feel alive, it's not growing, it's just kind of paused in your mind. And the truth is that you don't really want this person back. I feel like you want to feel what you felt back then. But that moment is gone, and you know this. And that's why it feels very quiet here instead of hopeful. So this is not longing, this is grief for a version of life that doesn't exist anymore, at least not with this person. And, that deserves honesty and not more waiting. So, group number 2, you are not stuck on this person because you still want them. You're stuck because this chapter never really moved forward or ended. It just froze. And your mind keeps going back to it. And it's not for love, but it's for understanding. So you're really missing the memories and not the reality. You just miss how this felt, not how it was. And I feel like you missed the version of you that existed back then. So this is not really attachment. This is just unfinished emotional processing. So your inner self is asking you to stop waiting for words that won't come and to stop expecting movement from something that already stopped. Not everything needs to end with answers. Some things end with you accepting them. And once you allow that, this stops feeling so heavy. And then you start feeling complete. So if you resonate with this reading, make sure you leave me a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next reading.